Well, hi there. This is a saltwater crocodile. I recently went to Australia to attend the Victorian Herpetological Society Expo in Melbourne. And while I was in the area, I got to go to the Ballarat Wildlife Park to interact with this little cutie, Crunch. 12 years ago, he was 5 meters long and weighed over 1,100 pounds. I'm sure he's not smaller now. Saltwater crocodiles are the largest crocodilians alive today. And I can tell you, when you're sharing space with them, that's not shocking. I have zip-lined over some really big crocodiles in my day, but this is the biggest crocodile I think I have ever seen in person. Feeding him like this was an absolutely unforgettable experience. I mean, just look at the way that this guy propels himself out of the water. And the crazy thing is that Crunch wasn't the crocodile we were most worried about. Obviously, Crunch has the ability to launch himself high enough to grab me over the wall. But he's a pretty chill dude. It was his girlfriend that we really had to keep an eye on. And while she is much smaller than Crunch, she's still an enormous animal. If she would be to grab you, and she will try, then there would be little hope for you all the same. She would still pull you into the water and tear you to pieces. And I'm sure once she had you in there, Crunch would be sure to not let her have all the fun. So this is a very, very serious animal. But at the VHS Expo, I got to hold this glorious juvenile rescue salty named Bucket, who is now an ambassador animal. And I got to hold him for a long time. I didn't want to give him back because he is legendary. And though they had to have his mouth taped for liability reasons, once the tape came off, he was just as delightful. Which really had me asking the question, is a saltwater crocodile a good pet? And is it the best pet reptile for me? No. Probably not. I mean, it's an insane idea. Right? Well, since I went all the way to Australia, and I had the chance to pick the brain of so many amazing saltwater crocodile keepers, and discovered that I had a lot of misconceptions about them, I figure that now is the right time to answer that question and give the saltwater crocodile a score based on our 5 categories, which are handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. But before I get to that, I want to spend a few moments talking about some of the interesting realizations that I had about saltwater crocodiles. Because there were several things that I had been taught or assumed about saltwater crocodiles that were false. And I also want to talk about my newfound appreciation for videos like this one. Because I used to think that videos about things like king cobras, mambas, and saltwater crocodiles were fun, but not that valuable. But my opinion about this has changed completely. Over the last few years, I have met tons of people all over the world purchasing some pretty crazy animals. It seems like almost everybody I met at the SOS2 Expo in South Africa had purchased a hot snake of some sort. I got a bearded dragon, this crested gecko, and a gaboon viper. Oh, just a leopard gecko, a corn snake, and an Egyptian cobra. And I have also met multiple people that have a number of different baby crocodilians, including Nile and saltwater crocodiles, with aspirations to get more. So I'm grateful that though I have seen these videos as mostly just for fun, I've always taken them just as seriously as any of our other pet reviews. And the thing is that I'm not here to tell you not to get a saltwater crocodile. I'm just here to tell you how much that decision is going to alter the course of your life so that you can make an informed decision. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about a couple of misconceptions that I had about saltwater crocodiles. First is where they're found. I grew up watching The Crocodile Hunter, so it was an incredible privilege to get to go to Australia Zoo for the first time and see the crocodiles that Steve Irwin caught in the Crocoseum that he built. I'm doing what I'm doing today because of Steve Irwin. But because my main experiences with salties came from seeing Steve work with them in Australia, I've often thought of them as largely an Australian species. However, a few years ago, I noticed that their range is much greater than just Australia. And I'll show you a range map here in a moment, because I discovered that I still had a big misconception about their range when I left on this trip. Because I thought that they were found across much of Australia. And I might not be alone in this. This might even explain some of Australia's dangerous reputation that I've never understood, even when I thought crocodiles were everywhere. I mean, if you stay out of the water, there is literally nothing in Australia that hunts humans. They have some dangerous spiders, sort of, but Sydney funnel webs are pretty much just found in Sydney, and redback spiders are just black widows. We have those here, no matter where you live. They have tons of venomous snakes, but they're all elapids. Elapids often have nasty bites, wicked potent venom, but they don't tend to bite people. Elapids are common in the countries with the most snake bite deaths on Earth, but the snakes that cause the most deaths in those countries are sawscale and Russell's vipers, because vipers sit still and rely on camouflage to avoid predators, which means that they often get stepped on. Elapids know how to run away. Australia has the most venomous snake in the world. It's never killed anybody. They have maybe 2 snakebite deaths each year. The land animal that kills the most people in Australia, by far, are horses, followed by cows and dogs. This video is sponsored by Fishing Clash. Saltwater crocs are not the catch I'd want to hook in real life, but in Fishing Clash, chasing huge catches is a blast. Fishing Clash is a free realistic fishing simulation game chosen by millions of anglers. It combines the relaxing side of fishing with the thrill of chasing bigger catches, unlocking gorgeous new locations, upgrading your boat and gear, and going after rare fish. We really like that it's easy to jump into and play on the fly. You can make a few quick casts to wind down, or you can dive in and chase rewards, level up, enter challenges, compete in duels, and try to land something even bigger than your last catch. If you enjoy nature, progression, collecting, competition, and those big satisfying payoff moments, Fishing Clash is the game for you. So jump in and fish with me. If you're a new user, download the game by using my link in the description or scan the QR code, enter my gift code, Clint26, and get your $20 value reward for free. It's an awesome starter boost. Thanks again to Fishing Clash for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. But what about the water? Well, many of the scariest marine animals in the world live in the waters off of Australia. And all put together, they don't even kill as many people in Australia as hymenopteran insects. But saltwater crocodiles, that is an animal to fear. And yet, on a list of dangerous animals that includes horses, cows, dogs, bees, sharks, snakes, crocodiles, and kangaroos, the animal on that list that kills the fewest people are crocodiles. That's right, you are in more danger from kangaroos than crocodiles in Australia. And this is particularly true everywhere but the northern coast. You see, this was my misconception. I was under the impression that saltwater crocodiles were pretty much everywhere in Australia. Stay out of the water and away from large ungulates and you should be fine. But it turns out that the waters, everywhere but the north, are pretty darn safe too. Australia is not, as I once thought, the center of the range of saltwater crocodiles. They barely make it in there. It's the southern edge of their range. This is an equatorial species. They need it hot and tropical, which will be important when we get to care. My second misconception was about their speed on land. They're slow. That's why things like this work. Their tail is so powerful that it can launch a 5-meter crocodile nearly straight out of the water like a missile. So within a few feet of the water, they can move extremely fast. In the water, forget about it. But on land, where the tail becomes a huge weight instead of a powerful propulsive force, well, their tiny legs are enough to scoot them around, but big ones are too large to even get their bellies off of the ground. Frankly, on land, smaller crocodiles are probably more menacing than large ones. That wasn't what I had ever been taught before. But when it was explained and demonstrated in the Crocodylus, it all made sense. Silly me. Down the road, I may make a full video about this whole trip to Australia, or specifically about my time at Australia Zoo, which is the realization of a dream I've had for most of my life. It was incredible, but I don't know if that's something you want to hear about. If it is, please let me know. But if you want to hear about it right now, I'm going to talk all about it in this week's Patreon Extras video. So if you already support us on Patreon, you're a stinking rad fan, go check it out right now. If not, check it out. So are these slow on land, barely Australian, toothy torpedoes good pets? Let's find out. When it comes to handleability, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 0 out of 5. That's because as adults, they will be about as difficult to handle as any animal. Way harder to handle alone, or even with a couple of friends, than a king cobra or a mamba, and they also get zeros. And I mean way harder. Males can easily weigh over 1,000 pounds. 2,000 pounds plus is not exceptional. 4,000 pounds is likely possible. What's your plan? And females, while smaller, are still likely to be 3 meters long and weigh more than you do. Often 2 to 3 times as much as a full-grown human male. You can wrestle, but you'll lose. And you can't just tap out. They're going to tear you apart and swallow you in pieces. It's just not the ideal handling experience. And it is true that you can tape their mouths shut. While they have one of, if not the strongest bites of any living animal, the muscles used to open the mouth are not strong at all. A little tape can hold it shut. The crocodile still could bash your brains out with its head or tail, but that does incapacitate their most formidable weapon. Thing is, I'm just not sure you have ever tried to put tape on the mouth of an adult saltwater crocodile. Probably try it on a juvenile and see how many times you would want to scale up the level of difficulty. And keep in mind that this might be the most intelligent of all reptiles. They're going to study you and figure out your patterns. Getting the tape on once does not mean that it will be as easy next time.
I remember.
I guess what I'm saying is that tape works well once it's on. But it would be easy to die with a roll of tape in your hand. And good luck getting it back off once it's on. It works for babies, but babies aren't the problem. In fact, babies are delightful to hold. A bite from a baby is no picnic, and by the time that they're a few feet long, they could mess you up. But they are so amazing to hold. Soft. Just a really special feel. If Bucket here were at this size, a fully grown saltwater crocodile, I would probably have 2 or 3. An absolutely magical animal. There is something so special about seeing an animal like this close. You can see the integumentary sensory organs, the ISOs, dotting the skin, which are all over the bodies of crocodiles, much more than in alligators. These are the reason that crocodilians are so reactive to movement in water. You can get a good look at their feet and claws, the way that their ears crack open when they're listening, and even how their eyes move when you rub them under the jaw. Handling a young saltwater crocodile is a delightful experience. One that might make you want one. But again, it will grow up. What then? What then? What then? Well, when it comes to care, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 1 out of 5. The truth is that there is no time when a saltwater crocodile is easy to care for. Babies tend to be a bit fragile. They can easily stress and require very specific water temperatures and conditions. Often they just don't want to feed. There is a very real chance that you will lose your baby crocodile as a baby, likely within a short period after getting it. However, if you manage to get conditions right and your animal starts feeding and processing food correctly, then you have a good chance of having success with your baby. In general, when I speak to people that have acquired giant snakes, or worse yet, giant crocodilians, the logic is that these animals grow slowly, and that they will have the facilities to keep them as adults by the time that they get that big. This is always the assumption. It just often isn't the reality. So let's talk about the facilities that you will need, and then your plan to acquire them. The cheapest way to keep an adult saltwater crocodile is probably to live somewhere tropical and keep it outdoors. To do this, you will need quite a bit of land, probably in a rather remote area. Not a lot of HOAs are going to be cool with you having a crocodile pond in your backyard. And every neighbor with a missing cat is going to point the finger at you, even in the rare instance that your crocodile isn't to blame. Worse if it's not a cat. To keep cats out and crocodiles in, you're going to need tall fencing that goes a good way into the ground. A determined crocodile is a hard thing to contain. Crunch here, before he came to Ballarat, was known as Houdini due to his ability to escape. Remember what we said about handleability? You ever had to call up all your friends to see who wants to try to jump on a loose adult crocodile in the middle of a workday? You better have a dozen or so on standby, plus alternates, should you lose any. The pond that you will need to be large, very large, filtered and probably heated. And you better have somewhere where you can contain the crocodile while you're doing maintenance on said pond. And saltwater crocodiles are, as I said before, very intelligent. It will figure out when it's being manipulated. So getting it into that containment might be a constant struggle requiring creativity and a few daring buddies, probably people from your standby list. In most places, however, you aren't going to be able to get away with an outdoor habitat. It will need to be at least partially indoors, which now means that you need to build some sort of an insulated structure around your pond. We're not to costs yet, but this is going to cost probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more, assuming that you're even living in a place where this is allowed. And this isn't exactly going to have incredible resale value. It takes a pretty specific buyer to purchase a building built to contain an adult saltwater crocodile. I'm not sure how easy it will be to get loans. And not only will you need a huge filtered pond, but being inside, you will need to simulate the tropical sun. This is an animal that is adapted to a life of full sun every day, all day long. That's a lot of heat and a lot of UVB. That will be a challenge, as most UV lights don't travel farther than a saltwater crocodile can reach, so expect to replace them fairly often. Feeding is going to be mostly large whole animals as adults. Smaller whole animals and even prepared diets can be used when they're smaller. But this also won't be cheap or easy to source. But maybe you know a farmer and have a huge freezer. None of this is impossible. It's probably about as possible as getting a Lamborghini, which is not an impossible dream. But this is like a situation where they will let you buy a Lamborghini for a few $1,000s, but you are then committed to pay for the rest 5 to 10 years later. I can guarantee that way more people would be buying Lamborghinis. I mean, I should be rich in 5 to 10 years, right? Really? What's your plan? How are you going to get rich? What are the odds that it will work? What are you going to do if you aren't rich by then? What are you going to do with a 3 to 4 meter, several 100-pound crocodile that no longer fits in any enclosure that you could build in your home? The zoo? Even most zoos aren't going to be in the market for what you have committed yourself to. Look, if you can't afford it now, you probably won't be able to afford it then. It is very unlikely that the crocodile is going to make you rich. And it isn't going to be an asset in your other ventures either. Here is my recommendation. Get the pet you can afford, not the one you think you will be able to afford in the future. Because when you fail, it's the animal that suffers every time. And this is a very special and very intelligent animal to have suffer because of your ungrounded optimism. When it comes to hardiness, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 3 out of 5. And really, that's just because of the challenges associated with babies. Not to mention the limited amounts of information available about their care. I would almost certainly recommend apprenticing under an experienced crocodilian keeper for a long time before you consider a crocodilian of any kind, especially something like a saltwater crocodile. But at the very least, consult with a lot of people that have had success raising babies. They aren't cheap or easy to find. The second to the last thing that you want is to decide that a saltwater crocodile is the right choice and then have your baby die because you were underprepared. A lot can go wrong with them. Getting it to feed and digest will be big battles to fight right off the bat. Don't assume that you can get it and figure it out later. Prepare for a baby saltwater crocodile like you would prepare for a chameleon. Get it right from the start. After you get the temps right and the animal established, my biggest concern would be adequate UV to avoid metabolic bone disease. The main reason that I decided that a dwarf caiman is likely more reasonable than an alligator for someone who lives where I do is because they are the main crocodilians that seem to develop well indoors. They don't live in full sun even in the wild. But even though those develop well indoors, I very much doubt that a salty will unless you get it all kinds of UVB. But if you achieve all of this, it might outlive you. Makes an interesting section of your will. Of course, if you own an adult saltwater crocodile, it'll probably be important to have all your affairs in order sooner than later. When it comes to availability, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 1 out of 5. They are out there. I know people that have them, but they're rare and are illegal in most places. So even if you can get one where you are, don't expect to move again. But your best bet is to find a breeder and have them incubate an egg for you. They often only incubate as many eggs as they have homes for. It's a big deal to have a pair of saltwater crocodiles to care for. The last thing you want is 20 more. This breeder should also be able to help you with some of the specifics of care. And honestly, don't be surprised if they're a little reluctant to sell one to you. They should be. If they're too willing, probably walk away. They don't care about you or their animals. Just money. Probably because their plans to get rich before their crocodiles matured somehow didn't pan out. If they care about you or their animals, they should try to talk you out of it until it becomes apparent that you are one of the handful of people on Earth that are actually right for a saltwater crocodile. Because I can guarantee that there are a lot more people that are right for a king cobra or a horse. That's right, the most dangerous animal in Australia, than are right for a saltwater crocodile. When it comes to upfront costs, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 1 out of 5. This is because I want you to have the money ready for the final facility before you get one. I know that you think you'll be a millionaire by 30, but most of the people that become millionaires by 30 don't buy crocodiles while they're broke. In many ways, it will be easier to become a millionaire by 30 if you don't have a saltwater crocodile. If anybody is selling you on a get-rich-quick scheme that begins with get a saltwater crocodile, don't listen to that person. Saltwater crocodiles are for people that have massive animal facilities, not for people that think they're going to have one someday, somehow. I have an animal facility. I have almost 1 million subscribers that have stood behind me as I've created it. I have a PhD and a great relationship with the local government to help me get permits. I am not right for a saltwater crocodile. My facility is too small, and though I'm working on a major expansion, I know what that's going to cost. I have no reason to suspect that starting where I am, 9 years into this channel and 7 into owning my own facility, growing faster than ever, that I will be able to provide for a large crocodile in 5 to 10 years. I'll be pleasantly surprised if I am. Maybe I'll get a crocodile. Then. Not now. I'm not ready. I can't afford it. And I have no reason to believe that I will ever be able to afford it. And I love saltwater crocodiles too much to do that to one. And that is why, overall, we give the saltwater crocodile a score of 1.2 out of 5. This isn't a good pet. And if you're one of the few people that could handle one, you don't need me to tell you that. But if what you want is a huge, impressive, semi-aquatic reptilian predator, then you probably want an Asian water monitor. It's not right for most people. But compared to a saltwater crocodile, it's a super reasonable pet. Even alligators and dwarf caimans are all kinds of reasonable by comparison. Of reptiles that are actually possible to keep in captivity, this is definitely one of the 5 worst, with a strong claim on being the most worst. But if you have to have the largest of all extant crocodilians, and you are already wealthy enough to provide for it, then the saltwater crocodile might be the best pet reptile for you. But you could have had a Lambo. As always, like and subscribe, and we hope to see you real soon. If anybody is selling you on a get-rich-quick scheme that begins with get a saltwater crocodile, don't listen to that person.
I just ran across at least 5 of those get-rich-quick schemes today.
All starting with get a saltwater crocodile?
Yeah.